Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chasing, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout. Mic check, lights flash, game time, stay ready. 2 vets in the zone, keep the pressure real heavy. Big hits, big plays, yeah, we breaking it down. Truth rings in your speakers, every word is the crown. From the north side hustle to that southern flame. Midwest grind, west coast of the game. Sports talk kings, yeah, we wear that crown. Turn it up, let them know it's about to go down. Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chaser, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout.
It's about to go down.
Yes. 2-5 is here. Sports Reports is ordered in the building. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things. While sipping on a liquid death, of course. So, today was a crazy day. I was sitting around and I was like, hey, what can I talk about today? And of course, the default was, hey, more college football. Hey, been arguing online about these top 25 rankings still. So, why not give it another go? Maybe do a preview or something. But then as I was sitting around, Pablo Torre dropped a bombshell on us. Allegedly Kawhi Leonard, the Klaw, is getting paid under the table and has been getting paid under the table for doing no work. So normally when you hear about people getting paid under the table, they are providing you a service, but maybe they don't have the right documentation. Maybe there's something, afoot, about the work that they're doing for you. So you put the money under the table so it can't be tracked, right? So back in 2019, Kawhi Leonard, needless to say, went on a championship run. Of course, that was aided by the Warriors' injuries, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, so on and so forth. But they won the title. He was the toast of the town. There was the new talk about, was he the new best player in the league? Then he did something crazy that you don't normally see. A guy that wins MVP, finals MVP, or some kind of award like that, leaving to go to another team as a free agent. So he's from LA. It came down to the Lakers and the Clippers, but of course the Raptors had their outside shot. All right. So there were rumors back then that some brass within Toronto was offering him some things that could be considered illegal, but it was bypassed. Hey, this guy doesn't really know what he's doing. He's new to the operation. We'll let that pass. But then, it also had came out that Kawhi's infamous Uncle Dennis was asking the Lakers for things like team ownership, which is already crazy because you had LeBron James on the team. So, go figure how that conversation went. But there's nothing wrong with that. You asked for that. You know what I mean? If I was working for, say, ESPN or in one of these stations, I might be like, hey, I'll just take 0.25. See what I did there? 0.25 of, some kind of deal that I get paid off of this company. So, no fault in asking. He signs with the Clippers. I believe it was 4 years, $103 million or something like that at the time. He goes for an extension in 2021. And as a part of this extension, allegedly, Aspiration LLC, which was a company that Steve Ballmer had invested in, was going to give Kawhi $28 million to do nothing. Endorsements, right? Usually you're marketing a product, you're doing commercials, maybe you're showing up at events to talk to the youth, NBA cares, that type of thing as an analogy. But he did nothing and he was required to do nothing. So, of course, as the average Joe, we're going to sit back and say, hey, if somebody's willing to pay you, then, hey, it is what it is. But then you start to put it together, like, the Intuit Dome came along. But then the Clippers had Aspiration across their jersey. Kawhi started using Aspire in different business ventures. So then you start to wonder, is something going on here? And of course, a lot of us didn't know this at the time, but now that we have some of the pieces provided by Pablo Torre, we can make these, I don't want to call them assumptions, but, we can come to these conclusions, if you will. Okay. So now the NBA is in a tough position because Pablo Torre is a very credible reporter. And, he's at the Athletic now, his whole thing is Pablo Torre finds out. So according to Pablo Torre, he has more than 3,000 documents that shows that all this money that we're talking about that Kawhi received was by way of circumventing the salary cap. So they could go over the cap to give him extra money. So then the first thing that came to my mind was Reggie Bush. USC, the whole, did you pay for a house for his parents, that type of thing. And I thought about that even and how I felt in the moment back in 2005 or whenever that broke. And at the time, I was like, well, hey, you still got to go on the field and perform, right? And Kawhi, you still got to go out on the court and perform. But obviously, when he's on the court, he performs, but he's just not on the court very much. I mean, he sat out, 60 games this year, give or take? So you go back to that and you say, well, what do the Clippers stand to benefit from that? I mean, they keep their star happy. I mean, I'm sure Paul George would have liked that deal too, right? So now you say to yourself, is there precedent for this? Well, yes, because back in the early 2000s, Joe Smith, former number 1 overall pick, go Terps, he was signing these deals with the Minnesota Timberwolves where, it would be like a minimal year extension for a couple of years. And as Minnesota gets their salary cap together, he was going to sign a bigger contract. But then they got caught, the story goes, and I heard this secondhand from listening to Vincent Goodwill, is that his agent, he was letting go of his agent to go to another agent. So the first agent blew the whistle. So amongst punishments in that scenario was the Timberwolves were fined $6 million. They lost 5 draft picks, got it down to 3. The owner got suspended, Glenn Taylor. Kevin McHale was given a leave of absence as the GM. And then obviously Minnesota went in some form of disarray, because they made the Western Conference Finals, but then KG left a few years after that. The Clippers don't have any draft picks to punish them with. I don't even think they have a first-round draft pick until 2030 or 31. So you can't go there. You can still fine them. You can still suspend people. But what do you do with Kawhi, right? Because, he accepted the deal. So you would like to think that there's something involved, because with the Joe Smith scenario, Minnesota lost his bird rights, but also he was given an ultimatum. You either leave the Timberwolves or you're suspended for a year, basically something along those lines. So with Kawhi, to take such a stance would be unprecedented for the fact of the level of star that he is. Maybe not the action within itself. Another action, right, is suspending Ballmer, taking Ballmer to court, trying to figure this out. But there's one problem with that. You can't go to war with Daddy Warbucks. Steve Ballmer could buy the NBA if he wanted to. So I don't know how you litigate that. Or could you go to Donald Sterling route and say, you know what? You're no longer the owner of this team, which would bring on more litigation that you might not be able to survive because he's going to throw his, $1 million, $1 billion war chest at it. So when you break it all down, you have to try to decide, how important is this? Did it take away from the integrity of the game? Now, I'm sure the NBA is going to be investigating and open up their own investigation here soon. And depending on what they find will determine the next steps. Okay. Now, with that being said, if you're another owner, how do you feel about this? Is this something that is regularly practiced around the league, around the NFL even? Is this something that is known? One of those, unwritten secrets that everybody knows about but nobody talks about, Fight Club. So now if you start digging into Ballmer, you might start finding out things about these other owners as people talk. The ship's going down with the captain and all that good stuff, right? Now, this is where it gets interesting, because I know when Donald Sterling got in trouble, there was a contingency of owners led by people like Mark Cuban that were kind of outspoken the opposite way. The opposite way, where he said, well, he's got the right to say those things. We don't have to agree with it, trying to soften the blow a little bit. Maybe that was one of those things where it was like, hey, this is the good old boy club. This is just how we talk, because obviously we saw what happened later with the Phoenix Suns owner. So from there, you open up Pandora's box potentially. So it behooves the owners to probably not press this issue so much. So it's going to be so interesting to see how this plays out, but at the very least, I would like to think that if this is proven to be true, that Kawhi would face some kind of suspension, Ballmer gets some kind of suspension, and there's going to be a contingent of public out here that really don't care, that wouldn't care, but it's just that other people are going to care, and now as a society, we just jump on the bandwagon. And this is a different time than when the Joe Smith thing happened. When the Joe Smith thing happened, social media wasn't this great of an entity. You didn't have people just everywhere knowing everybody's every single thought. And now in this new era, there's going to be talk. There's going to be skin. Everybody wants their pound of flesh. They talk about cancel culture, whatever that may be. We ain't going to get into that. But they talk about that. Could Steve Ballmer find himself on the wrong side of cancel culture? I talked about his money, but there's some things that you just got to sometimes take the L on, step back, and then you can go make more money, because I'm sure if you sold the Clippers, the Lakers just got $10 billion. And obviously the Clippers aren't the Lakers, but you would imagine that they would get at least 3/4 of that, 4/5 of that. So there's a lot to be seen here, and I'm here for every single moment. And I want you to keep your eyes on it. Let's talk about it. Let me know your thoughts. Should the NBA take super punitive action against Kawhi? Should they take action against Ballmer? I want to hear from you. So this is Sports Reports as Ordered. I'm 25. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things and sip you a liquid death.
No chasing, no doubt. From the
Love
east
y'all.
to the west, it's the order we shout. Mic check, lights flash, game time, stay ready.
Peace.
2 vets in the zone, keep the pressure real heavy. Big hits, big